inspired by past experiences and practices that engage the grandparents and again the mothers of these people, of these young people that we serve. The Ministry of Catholic Higher Education should also aim to build bridges between the church and higher education. A church defined as the people of God walking together in the journey of faith. And with this, I finished. New bridges translated into access, engagement, and new connections. Also, higher education defined an Catholic education and as the university institutions, dynamics, and key stakeholders, such university admissions, students, academics affairs, should be involved, should be responsible, should be engaged in the dialogue towards engagement, leadership, and access of Latinx. Now the question is, how are we building and mapping bridges that engage, imagine, and ultimately map leadership of our young people? Thank you. Oh, so I want to do something, and this is something new that I'm trying because of this world of Zoom, and then maybe my co-host, Richard, maybe you can help us to facilitate some Q&A and conversation. This is just a quick exercise. I'm going to close here the presentation. I try to leave it here. Let's see. Stop share. And then I'm gonna send you all a link if it's possible. I'm gonna do an exercise. It's just very quick, takes 1-2 minutes on Mentimeter. I'm trying to do this with my students lately. It creates collages. So if we could think of one word or two words in which we can reimagine, rethink, mapping success among Latinx, maybe we can write it down and it will create just a small collage in this case. And Dina Marie, please feel free to write down your word. I'm going to send this link and I'm going to try to share it with everyone briefly. And that way, I put here share. And then I'm going to send right now the link through the chat. Okay, perfect. So if you could please click on this link and you're going to see a presentation with a question.
Oh.
And I'm going to ask you to please write one word that, or two words. You have the opportunity to do 2 entries per participant that speaks to you as we reimagine or reimagine and map success among Latinx youth. Let's share with everyone. Try to share with everyone my screen right now because this is really cool what you can see. And hopefully I will share this with Dr. Mark and Marco and with you, Dr. Bauch, and you can keep it as a recording of some of our reflections, even if it's just only for, I appreciate. And feel free to.
I submitted mine before I thought to add that second word, but I think please. I would have added familia.
If you want to do it again, please feel free to do it again. And then that way we include another word. And then since we're a small group, that way we can have more words. It's okay.
So I sent in a few more words, two more. If you want to refresh, maybe they'll
Okay,
show
I'm
up.
gonna refresh. This is a new tool that I'm trying.
Nice.
And now, yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. And what I'm gonna do is that I am going to send you, you can see it. I'm gonna send you and the participants, maybe send you the co-host and those who organize this collage. So you can save it as one of our memorias from our conversation. And with this,
Perfect.
With this collage, I want to thank you, and I want to open to the conversation. If you have any, maybe base the conversation on the word that you wrote, or some of key aspects mentioned throughout this presentation that maybe move your reflection. Cesar?
Yeah. So first, thank you, Claudia, for that presentation. It was extremely informative and thought-provoking. Definitely lots of notes I took here and lots of stuff to think about. As I think about my students in particular, and again, to limit, it's Boston College, right? Boston College students. The few Latinx students that I have, when I talk to them about Catholicism in the United States, they tend to hesitate because they identify it with a very conservative politics. And so, that's one of the reasons they say that they just don't necessarily trust the rhetoric of the church, because they see that the bishops are aligned with conservative politicians in many cases, right? So any thoughts on that as to why, Latinx students are fleeing from the church in some ways?
Yes, so as I said, and thank you, Cesar, thank you for bringing this point into the conversation. When we talk about success of Latinx, we have to talk about faith. We have to talk about religious identity, which has been great part of my research. Actually, I started doing my research trying to listen immediately about the religious identity under Catholicism, and I had to spend a whole year listening to their social location and the struggle of their immigrant families first in order to understand their faith. So when we talk about, I was saying in my conversation, in my talk, in my research, that their faith identity has everything to who they are and where they come from. So when two things to say here. So when we say that they are drifting away from the church and they are not Catholic, I'm one of the big cheerleaders of young Latinx young people, particularly young students of color, because when we say that they're drifting away, sometimes we assume that they do not love God anymore, that they just are not spiritual anymore, that they are. It is more than that. Some of them are drifting away because throughout their life, they grew up in very vulnerable uh, um, communities, beginning with their families, the struggle of their families, who at the same time, yes, we are Catholics and we go to mass and we pray to God, but in the meantime, when we leave mass, we have to figure out as not being stopped by the police because I'm still resolving the immigration status, or I'm trying to find a job or 2-3 jobs so I can send my kid to Catholic school. There are many dynamics that these families have to negotiate. So when we say that they're drifting away, we have to look at actually the social context or the daily dynamics. The speaker was talking about the daily dynamics, the everyday of what these Latinx communities have to face in their everyday life. Cesar, when I was in another presentation yesterday, and when I was saying in that when I came to the United States, I never anticipated that the dynamics, that these categories of race, gender, immigration status, that we talk in class, in the classroom setting, we're going to be reminded in the everyday life. These are not categories that we just study in the classroom or here in the convocation and we just finish, shut down, and we leave and we continue a perfect. No, these are categories that we actually have to deconstruct and construct every day of our lives. And with those categories, well, it come questions. So this leads me to the second part of it. How we as church, are responding directly to the cry out of this vulnerable community who are facing gender, immigration, socioeconomic, other dynamics that are really troubling. How are we responding? Not only how are we responding, are we opening those spaces for conversation? So when something critical happens in a community, I usually look forward to the church sermon, to the church on Sunday, to see what my pastor or how my church is praying for that specific community. And that's a way for me to know if really the gospel is being embodied and lived out at that specific moment in time and history and space. So when your Latinx students are drifting away, perhaps it's not because they want to or they don't believe more in God, but because first of all, they had been negotiating these dynamics and these categories their whole life, even if they're American. That's another thing. They're American and considered as second, third class citizens. Still speak perfect English, are U.S. citizens, but still consider and negotiating these categories. And second, have their questions been responded? And therefore, are there enough spaces of participation action for them to name themselves? Richard.
See, Claudia, thank you so much. I want to echo Cesar in thanking you for such a rich presentation and so important too. I mean, I was just struck so many times by certain things you said. I just thought it's just incredibly important. So thank you so much. I have a couple different things. Let me start with one. I don't know, maybe we'll get to the second one, but you talk about success, and that has become such a common and central word on my campus and on campuses everywhere, because administration has decided that a success program with success coaches is key to really the future of the university, to attracting students and to having them finish their curriculum in a reasonable time and then to advance to a job, So success. And at my university, we have restructured radically. And now there is a whole unit that is the success team. They have the success coaches. Every student, in addition to the faculty advisor, now has a success coach. And, we're working out what does that mean and what is the relationship between the success coach. And that's all background though. What you said today, I think, is incredibly important, because you talked about these students, and I'm at a Hispanic serving institution. We are about 34% Hispanic, but to be honest, it must be more than that. When I look at my classroom, when I go to graduation and look, it's much more than that. I mean, that's really who we are. So when you said that for first generation Latinx, these things are defined differently because their experience is different. And you said success is really something that becomes defined in a context of community, in a family. You said these values like responsibility and sacrifice and success. Like, what does success mean? Well, it is defined differently right? Than for people who look like me and people who come from a different social location, you know? And I guess what I'm thinking to myself is this whole new effort for success coaches and that sort of thing. Have we calibrated this properly? Have we thought about who we're serving here and what we say and the outreach that we make, all in the name of success and the success of these young women and men? Do we need to do things a little differently? So I kind of put that out there. I want to
Yes.
maybe hear your thoughts, and if you have any concrete suggestions or ideas, what do you think?
This is, well, Richard, thank you so much for continuing the conversation. And that's why, for me, what's important to kind of put, and you saw some of the slides had a lot of statistics and everything, but this is mapping the reality. So before we talk about success, we have to consider, first of all, the socio-economic characteristics and the background of young Latinx. And young Latinx, they just came directly from nowhere. No man living an island, no human living an island, right? So they just didn't came and like that.
Exactly.
They
Right.
they're coming from a specific comunidad, from a
Yes.
specific community, and that specific community has some particular characteristics of its own social location. And that's what I'm saying when we talk about trying to define success in the college. We have to talk about what has been, for example, the educational trajectory. Let's begin with the educational trajectory, because we're trying to graduate these kids. We're trying to, how we always say, be successful in graduation rates, right? So get them to walk the stage, right? That's always any dream of any education. So when I see them as freshmen, I always look at, particularly at my Latinx and Caribbean students, I look at them and I said, my dream for these students is that they are able to succeed and graduate. Because that's another thing that was not mentioned. From my research, from 100% for the whole group, from out of the whole group, only 80% were able to complete their full 4-year degree. That says something about retention and as well as drifting away and not being able to finish. But I'm going to talk about that later. So that's what I'm talking about, the trajectory. We have to look at the trajectory of these students. And looking at the trajectory is not placing them in a box and say, this is the trajectory of the students, and we have to put them in a special education programs or something that make them kind of different from the others. But instead of that, we need to listen to what has been the not only the socioeconomic trajectory of the families of these kids, but also the educational trajectory of these kids. For example, in the case of the educational journey of these kids, of this, about 95% K to 12 Latinx students do not attend private education. Regardless of if it is Catholic or not, private education gives them the skills to being able to access and be prepared to attend to a higher education institution that equips them for better opportunities or educational opportunities toward the future. So most likely, most of these kids, only 3% of these kids have the opportunity to do that. And also, those who are not able to participate or to attend private institution, they have the risk, and then we move back to the socioeconomic characteristics, to attending underperforming and segregated public schools that don't equip them with the tools, writing, writing, speaking. If we go into the particularities of it, particularly in testing, this is something incredible that I'm researching, particularly the last year. It is incredible that in an institution, in the institutions that I've taught for the past years, most of the honors students are white students. And then the majority of those students who are students of color, they're placed in regular, on the regular classes with some of the challenges of writing, reading, and speaking challenges. So what does it tell us as we send one of these kids to a acceptable college or Catholic university in the United States? So we have to somehow redefine what success look like. On another note, success is not only academic success, because if we talk about academic success, then look at the statistics. These kids are academically challenged. How can we say that those students who attend underperforming and segregated public schools, who come with a basketball scholarship or a soccer scholarship, it is most likely that this kid, this student, is going to struggle academically. So success is not necessarily academic success, because somehow we, on the other hand, need to open the pipelines for these kids to not only feel, and that's where the pastoral part enter into that. They feel engaged and they are open spaces for participation. So they are feel that they are part of a community. So I don't think success is only academic, because this community is vulnerable, but also I feel that success is also opening the spaces so they can bloom out and they can arise in through different forms of accompaniment or acompañamiento. It is
Yes.
yeah.
That's
We could
perfect. Yeah.
continue talking about that, but it's important to redefine, listen to that specific community. There are cases, and we're still a minority, that we access to doctorate programs and degree. But if we look at the larger population, there's still a great challenge of the socio-economic and educational patterns and trajectories.
Friends, at this point, I have another responsibility. I have to go to another room to start another session. But what I have done, this is wonderful. And then I would hope it would continue. So I have made Claudia the host for this session. So I will leave, but I invite you to continue the exchange. And I believe, I know I will see Cesar a las 3 at 3 o'clock. For his session, and maybe Claudia too. So, so nos vemos pronto.
Claro.
Hasta las 3.
Muchas gracias.
Okay.
Richard, one question. This finishes at 3:30, right?
I believe your session ended at 2:15.
Oh, so we're
and now
great.
there is and now there is a break, and then at 3 o'clock the next round of sessions starts, and that's when Cesar's session is.
Oh, excellent. Thank you, Richard. And thank you, Dina Marie. And Cesar, feel free to stay for 2 minutes so we can catch up. And thank you all so much for the opportunity and the space.
Perfect.
God bless.
So how are you? That was,
hola, ¿cómo estás?
That was a great, I think we can stop recording.
Oh, yeah. Let me see.
Yeah.